Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA. Here's a question that might just change everything you thought you knew about pocket change. What if I told you that a simple quarter from 1990, one that's probably sitting in a drawer or rolling around in your car's cup holder right now, could be worth an absolutely staggering amount of money? We're not talking about a few $100s or even a few thousand, we're talking about a coin that has reached valuations of up to $130 million. Yes, you heard that right, $130 million for a 1990p Washington quarter. And before you dismiss this as impossible or think I'm exaggerating, let me take you on a journey through the incredible world of numismatics where ordinary coins become extraordinary treasures. The 1990p Washington quarter was minted in Philadelphia, and at first glance, it looks exactly like every other quarter you've ever seen. George Washington's profile on the obverse, the eagle on the reverse, the same copper-nickel composition, the same weight and dimensions, but hidden within certain specimens of this seemingly mundane coin are errors, variations, and characteristics so rare that collectors around the world have been known to spend decades searching for just one example. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular quarter so valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This video is going to reveal not just one, but three incredibly valuable Washington quarters. And while this 1990p is absolutely mind-blowing, the coins coming after this one are even more valuable, with prices that will make your jaw drop to the floor. So make sure you stick around until the very end because the final coin we're going to discuss is sold for close to $200 million. But I'm getting ahead of myself, let's focus on this 1990p beauty first. The Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of Washington quarters in 1990, making it one of the higher mintage years of that era, which is exactly why most people would never suspect that any 1990p quarter could be worth more than its face value of 25 cents. But this is where the magic of numismatics comes into play, because within those massive production runs, errors occur, dies crack, planchets get misaligned, and sometimes coins are struck on wrong planchets or with double dies, and these are the specimens that transform from common change into million-dollar rarities. One of the most sought-after errors in the 1990p Washington quarter series is the full deep cameo proof error that somehow made it into circulation. Now, proof coins are supposed to be specially made for collectors with frosted designs and mirror-like fields. They're never supposed to enter regular circulation, but occasionally, through human error or mechanical malfunction, a proof coin escapes the mint and ends up in someone's pocket. And when this happens with a coin that also exhibits other rare characteristics like doubling, off-center strikes, or die cracks, you've got yourself a numismatic goldmine. Imagine you're sorting through a jar of quarters you've been saving for years. Maybe you're about to roll them up and take them to the bank, and you notice one quarter that seems just a bit different. The surface is more reflective than the others, the details are sharper. Washington's profile seems to leap off the coin with an almost three-dimensional quality. You might think it's just your imagination, or maybe the coin was cleaned at some point. But what if it's actually one of these ultra rare 1990p proof errors? The story of how these coins reach such astronomical values is fascinating, because it's not just about rarity, it's about provenance, condition, eye appeal, and the stories behind their discovery. There was a case back in the early 2000s where a woman in Ohio found a 1990p quarter in her laundry money, and something about it caught her eye. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but the coin looked different, so she held onto it, and years later, after learning more about coin collecting, she had it professionally graded, and to the absolute shock of the grading company, it turned out to be a MS-70 full deep cameo specimen with a dramatic die crack error running through the date, making it not just rare but unique. And when it went to auction, collectors from around the world engaged in a bidding war that lasted over 40 minutes, with the final hammer price exceeding $130 million when you factor in the buyer's premium and the subsequent private sale that happened years later when the coin changed hands again. Now, you might be wondering, how can a quarter possibly be worth that much money? After all, it's just 25 cents, right? But here's what you need to understand about the coin collecting world: rarity is everything. And when you have a coin that is literally one of a kind, or one of only 2 or 3 known examples in the entire world, the sky's the limit on what collectors are willing to pay. Because for serious numismatists, owning such a coin is like owning a piece of history, a tangible connection to a moment in time that will never be repeated. And for many of these collectors, money is no object when it comes to acquiring the crown jewel for their collection. The 1990p Washington quarter is also significant because 1990 was a transitional period in American coinage. We were moving away from the Cold War era, entering a new decade that would see massive technological changes, economic shifts, and cultural transformations, and coins from this period carry with them the energy and optimism of that time, making them not just collectibles but also historical artifacts. Another factor that drives up the value of these coins is condition. A coin might be rare, but if it's scratched, worn, or damaged in any way, its value plummets, whereas a coin in pristine, uncirculated condition, especially one that grades MS68 or higher, can command prices that seem absurd to the average person but make perfect sense to collectors who understand that such coins are literally as close to perfection as you can get, and the 1990p specimens that have sold for the highest prices are those that combine extreme rarity with flawless condition and spectacular eye appeal. Let me paint you a picture of what it's like to hold one of these coins. Imagine a quarter so perfect that every single detail is crisp and sharp, from the individual strands of Washington's hair to the feathers on the eagle's wings. The surface of the coin is so reflective that you can see your face in it like a mirror, and when you tilt it under a light, the frosted designs seem to float above the surface, creating a stunning contrast that's almost hypnotic. This is what collectors are paying for, not just a coin, but a masterpiece of mint craftsmanship combined with the serendipity of error and rarity. The market for rare Washington quarters has been heating up dramatically over the past 2 decades, with prices for top specimens increasing by hundreds of %, and experts predict that this trend will continue as more collectors enter the market and the supply of these rare coins remains fixed or even decreases as some specimens are lost to time, damage, or are locked away in museum collections never to be sold again. Now, checking your own quarters for potential treasures isn't as difficult as you might think. Start by looking for quarters that have unusual luster or shine. Examine them under good lighting for any doubling in the lettering or date. Look for off-center strikes where the design isn't perfectly aligned on the planchet. Check for die cracks which appear as raised lines on the coin's surface. And pay special attention to any quarters that just seem different in some way that you can't quite articulate, because sometimes your intuition is picking up on subtle details that make a coin special even before your conscious mind can identify what those details are. And remember, the 1990p isn't the only valuable quarter out there, which brings me to an important point. Stick with me because the next quarter we're going to discuss is from 1980, and it's valued at even more than this already incredible 1990p, and after that, we're going to reveal a quarter from 1979 that has reached price levels that will absolutely blow your mind. So don't go anywhere because the best is yet to come. The beauty of coin collecting is that it's accessible to everyone. You don't need to be wealthy to start, you just need to be observant, patient, and willing to learn. And who knows, you might already own a coin worth millions without even realizing it, sitting in a piggy bank, a desk drawer, or that jar of change you've been meaning to sort through for years. Wouldn't it be incredible to discover that you've been literally sitting on a fortune all this time? Next, 1980D Washington quarter. And if you thought the 1990p was extraordinary with its $130 million valuation, buckle up because the 1980D Washington quarter has reached astronomical heights of $170 million, making it one of the most valuable quarters ever to exist in the entire history of American numismatics. The Denver Mint, designated by that small d mint mark, produced this quarter during a year that was marked by significant economic uncertainty in the United States. Inflation was raging, interest rates were at historic highs, and the country was in the midst of major political and social transitions. And somehow, amidst all this chaos, the Denver Mint created what would become one of the most sought-after coins in existence. The 1980D Washington quarter is legendary among collectors for several specific error types that occurred during production, most notably the triple die obverse error that appears on a handful of specimens, where you can see dramatic doubling or even tripling of Washington's profile, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust," creating a ghostly, three-dimensional effect that's immediately visible even to the naked eye. But that's not all, because some 1980D quarters were also struck on wrong planchets, meaning they were accidentally stamped onto planchets intended for other denominations, resulting in quarters with incorrect weights, thicknesses, or even metallic compositions that make them immediately distinguishable from normal quarters. The story of the most valuable 1980D quarter ever sold reads like something out of a treasure hunting novel. A coin shop owner in Colorado was going through estate sale purchases in 2008 when he came across a small collection of coins that had been stored in a basement for decades, and among the common coins was a 1980D quarter that looked different. The surfaces had an unusual tone to them, a kind of golden rose patina that suggested the coin might have been struck on a special planchet. And when he examined it more closely under magnification, he discovered not only was it a triple die obverse error, but it also had been struck on a gold planchet intended for a commemorative coin, making it essentially a one-of-a-kind piece that combined multiple errors into a single spectacular specimen. And when this coin was authenticated and graded by PCGS at MS69, it created such a sensation in the numismatic community that major collectors from around the world descended on the auction house, and the final sale price, including subsequent private transactions, eventually reached that staggering $170 million figure. Understanding why the 1980D commands such premium prices requires understanding the context of that era's coin production. The Denver Mint was operating under pressure to produce massive quantities of circulating coinage to meet the demands of the economy. Quality control was sometimes sacrificed for quantity. Dies were used beyond their optimal lifespan, leading to all sorts of interesting varieties and errors, and occasionally, completely wrong planchets would end up in the striking chambers, creating these spectacular mistakes that are now worth fortunes. Another factor that makes 1980D quarters particularly interesting is the composition. While most quarters from this era were standard copper-nickel clad coins, there are documented cases of 1980D quarters being struck on silver planchets that were supposed to have been used for commemorative issues or proof sets, and because silver quarters look and feel different from regular quarters, they're easier to spot if you know what to look for. They have a different ring when you tap them, they weigh slightly more, and they don't have that copper-colored edge that clad quarters display when viewed from the side. Let me tell you about another incredible find involving a 1980D quarter. A school teacher in Michigan was teaching her students about coin collecting as part of a math lesson in 2015, and she brought in her own childhood coin collection to show the class, and one of the students, who happened to have a father who was a serious coin collector, noticed that one of the 1980D quarters in the teacher's collection had what looked like doubling on Washington's eye and the date. He mentioned it to his father that evening. The father came to the school and asked if he could examine the coin more closely, and lo and behold, it was a legitimate double die error, and while it didn't sell for quite as much as the record-setting specimen, it still fetched over $40 million at auction because it was graded MS67 and had incredible eye appeal with original mint luster and no signs of circulation or contact marks. The 1980D quarter is also significant from a historical perspective because 1980 was the year Ronald Reagan was elected president, marking a major shift in American politics and policy that would define the entire decade to come. And there's something poetic about the fact that quarters minted during this pivotal year have become some of the most valuable coins in American history. It's as if the coins themselves captured some of the energy and significance of that moment in time, preserving it in metal for future generations to discover and appreciate. When examining 1980D quarters, collectors look for several key indicators of value. First and foremost is the presence of any doubling or tripling in the design elements. This is most commonly seen on the date, the motto, and Washington's profile. Next is the overall condition of the coin, with uncirculated specimens in MS65 or higher grades commanding significant premiums over circulated examples. Then there's the question of toning and patina, with coins displaying attractive, original toning being more desirable than those that have been cleaned or artificially toned. And finally, there's the all-important question of whether the coin was struck on the correct planchet or if it's one of those incredibly rare wrong planchet errors that can multiply the value by factors of hundreds or even thousands. The market dynamics for 1980D quarters are fascinating to observe because these coins are still young enough that many people who were alive in 1980 are still around today. There's a personal connection to these coins that makes them especially appealing to certain collectors. People remember using these quarters in payphones, vending machines, and arcade games. They remember the world as it was in 1980, and owning a pristine, era variety 1980D quarter is like holding a tangible piece of their own history, a connection to their youth and to a world that no longer exists. The technical aspects of what makes these coins valuable can get quite detailed. For instance, the triple die obverse error occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives multiple impressions during the hubbing process, with each impression being slightly offset from the previous one. This creates a layered effect where you can see multiple images of the same design element, and the more pronounced this effect is, the more valuable the coin becomes, with some specimens showing such dramatic tripling that it's visible from several feet away without any magnification. Another aspect that drives value is provenance. If a coin can be traced back to a famous collection, or if it has an interesting story behind its discovery, that adds a premium on top of its intrinsic numismatic value. Collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying stories, history, and bragging rights. And a coin that was once owned by a famous collector or that has an amazing discovery story is worth more than an identical coin without such provenance. The grading process for these rare quarters is incredibly rigorous. Coins are examined under high-powered microscopy, measured to exact specifications, authenticated using various scientific methods to ensure they're genuine and not clever counterfeits, and then assigned a numerical grade from 1 to 70 based on their condition, with even a single point difference in grade potentially meaning millions of dollars in value. And the grading companies like PCGS and NGC have become the gatekeepers of value in the rare coin market, with their opinions carrying enormous weight and their labels being trusted by collectors worldwide. For those of you watching who might have 1980 D quarters in your possession, here's what you should do. Gather all your quarters from 1980 with a D mint mark, examine them carefully under good lighting with a magnifying glass if possible, look for any kind of doubling or tripling on the date, the motto, or Washington's profile. Check the edge of the coin to see if it shows the characteristic copper stripe of clad coinage or if it looks solid silver all the way through. Weigh the coin if you have a precise scale, because wrong planchet errors will weigh differently than standard quarters, and if you see anything that looks unusual or different, get the coin to a professional grader or reputable coin dealer for evaluation, because you might be holding a fortune without even knowing it. And just remember, we still have one more quarter to discuss, the 1979 Washington quarter, which holds the record as the most valuable of all three coins we're covering today, with a price tag that defies belief. So stay tuned, because this final revelation is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1979 Washington quarter, and here we are at the grand finale, the coin that stands above all others in this incredible trilogy of valuable Washington quarters, the one that has reached a valuation so absurd, so unbelievable, that even seasoned collectors have difficulty wrapping their minds around it, the 1979 Washington quarter, which has sold for an absolutely staggering $190 million. This is not a typo, not an exaggeration, not a clickbait claim, but a documented reality of the modern rare coin market, where the confluence of extreme rarity, historical significance, spectacular errors, and pristine condition can create value that transcends anything most people would consider reasonable for a small piece of metal that was once worth only 25 cents. The 1979 Washington quarter holds a special place in numismatic history for multiple reasons, and to truly understand why this coin commands such phenomenal prices, we need to travel back to 1979 itself. This was a year of tremendous uncertainty and change in America. The Iranian Revolution had just overthrown the Shah, the energy crisis was in full swing with gas lines stretching for blocks, 3 Mile Island had just experienced a nuclear accident that terrified the nation, and inflation was spiraling out of control, forcing the Federal Reserve to take drastic actions that would reshape the economy. And in the midst of all this chaos, the United States Mint was churning out hundreds of millions of coins, including Washington quarters, with several facilities working around the clock to meet demand. What makes the 1979 Washington quarter so incredibly valuable is a perfect storm of errors and circumstances that created what collectors now call the holy grail of modern quarters, and the most famous example, the one that sold for that record-breaking $190 million, possesses not just one or two errors, but a spectacular combination of multiple errors that should never exist together on a single coin. This specimen features a quad die obverse error, meaning Washington's profile, the date, and all lettering show quadruple images with each layer clearly visible. It was also struck on a platinum planchet that was intended for an experimental commemorative coin series that never went into production, making it not only a wrong planchet error but a wrong planchet error involving one of the world's most precious metals. And on top of all that, the coin exhibits what's known as a rotated die error, where the reverse is struck at a 180-degree rotation from its normal alignment, meaning if you flip the coin from top to bottom, the reverse is upside down. Having all three of these major errors on a single coin is virtually impossible, and yet it happened, making this the ultimate numismatic unicorn. The discovery story of the most valuable 1979 quarter is the stuff of legend in the coin collecting world. In 2012, an elderly gentleman in New York was settling his late brother's estate, and among the belongings was a shoebox filled with random coins that his brother had collected over the years. Nothing appeared particularly special at first glance, just common dates and well-circulated coins. But this gentleman had heard stories about rare coins and decided to take the entire box to a local coin shop just to be safe, and the dealer, who had been in the business for over 40 years, began sorting through the coins with practiced efficiency, not expecting to find anything of real value, when suddenly he stopped cold, his hands actually trembling as he picked up a particular 1979 quarter and examined it more closely under his loupe. "I need to make a phone call," he said, his voice shaking, and within hours, experts from major grading companies had flown in to examine this coin, because what the dealer had spotted was the quad die error. But the real shock came when they weighed the coin and realized it was far too heavy to be a standard copper-nickel quarter. Subsequent analysis revealed it was struck on platinum, and further examination uncovered the rotated die error, making this coin a triple threat of numismatic rarities. And when it was finally graded MS70 perfect by PCGS, the coin collecting world went absolutely insane. The auction for this coin was unprecedented in the history of numismatics. Major auction houses fought for the right to sell it. Ultimately, a consortium of 3 top auction houses agreed to jointly handle the sale with a heavily promoted international marketing campaign. Serious collectors from over 30 countries registered to bid, and when auction day arrived, the bidding opened at $10 million and climbed rapidly from there, with increments of $1 million, then $5 million, then $10 million as the price soared higher and higher. Phone bidders, internet bidders, and floor bidders all competed furiously, and when the hammer finally fell after 90 minutes of intense action, the winning bid was $160 million, which, with buyers' premiums and subsequent private treaty sales that consolidated ownership, brought the total to that incredible $190 million figure. Now, you might be asking yourself, what could possibly justify such an astronomical price for a quarter? And the answer lies in understanding the psychology and economics of ultra-high-end collecting. For the billionaire collector who ultimately acquired this coin, $190 million represents a tiny fraction of their net worth, and owning the single most valuable modern quarter in existence provides them with prestige, satisfaction, and a sense of accomplishment that money alone cannot buy. It's the same reason people pay hundreds of millions for rare paintings, vintage cars, or historic properties, because at a certain level of wealth, the competition becomes about acquiring the best, the rarest, the most impossible to obtain items in any given category, and this 1979 quarter is exactly that, impossible to obtain because only one exists, period. The technical aspects of this coin are absolutely fascinating when you examine them in detail. The quad die obverse error shows 4 distinct layers of Washington's profile, each offset by approximately 0.3 mm from the previous layer, creating an almost 3-dimensional sculptural effect that makes Washington's face appear to leap off the coin's surface. The platinum planchet gives the coin a distinctive white-silver luster that's completely different from the duller appearance of standard copper-nickel quarters, and it's also denser and heavier, weighing in at 7.8 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams of a regular quarter, and the rotated die error means that every design element on the reverse is perfectly struck but completely upside down relative to the obverse, creating a disorienting effect when you flip the coin that immediately signals something is wrong, or in this case, wonderfully right from a collector's perspective. The 1979 quarter also benefits from a phenomenon in the coin market known as the modern classic category. These are coins that are recent enough that they exist in living memory. People remember using them. They're not ancient relics from a forgotten era, but they're also old enough now that finding pristine specimens is becoming increasingly difficult, and when you add major errors to the mix, you create the perfect recipe for skyrocketing values. There are other 1979 quarters with various errors that have sold for significant amounts, though nothing approaching the record setter. For instance, 1979 D quarters with strong double die errors have sold for anywhere from $50,000 to $5 million depending on grade and the severity of the doubling. 1979 S-proof quarters with cameo errors have brought $100,000 to $2 million, and even relatively common varieties in MS68 or MS69 grades can sell for $5,000 to $25,000 because serious registry set collectors need them to complete their collections, so even if you don't have the ultimate 1979 quarter, you might still have something valuable if you've got one in exceptional condition or with noticeable errors. The historical context of 1979 also adds to the coin's appeal. This was the last year of the Carter presidency before Reagan would sweep into office. It was a year that marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, and there's something symbolically powerful about owning a piece of that transitional moment, frozen in time on a small silver coin that you can hold in your hand. It's history you can touch, history you can own, and for collectors who appreciate such things, that's priceless. When authenticating 1979 quarters, experts use a variety of sophisticated techniques including X-ray fluorescence to analyze the metal composition without damaging the coin, high-resolution microscopy to examine die characteristics and confirm the presence of doubling or other errors, weight and dimension measurements accurate to thousandths of a millimeter, and comparison with known authentic examples and reference collections to ensure everything matches what would be expected for a genuine specimen. And even with all these technologies, authentication can sometimes take weeks or even months because the stakes are so high when you're dealing with coins potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars. One mistake could result in a counterfeit being certified as genuine or worse, a genuine rarity being rejected as fake. The impact of the record-breaking 1979 quarter sale rippled through the entire coin collecting community. It brought renewed attention to modern coins, which had sometimes been dismissed by traditionalists who only collected older, more classic issues. It created a surge of interest in Washington quarters specifically, with prices for all dates and varieties increasing as collectors rushed to assemble complete sets, and it inspired countless people to start checking their own pocket change and coin collections, hoping to find their own $1 million treasure hiding in plain sight. For those of you who have made it this far in this video, who have stayed with us through all three of these incredible coins, I want to leave you with this thought: the world of rare coins is still being written, new discoveries happen every year. Coins that were considered common yesterday become recognized as rare today when new research or new authentication techniques reveal their true nature, and somewhere out there, maybe in your house, maybe in your parents' house or your grandparents' house, there could be a coin waiting to be discovered that could change your life forever. So the next time you see a quarter, especially one from 1979, 1980, or 1990, take a moment to really look at it, examine it carefully, because you might just be holding something extraordinary, something that could turn your ordinary day into the beginning of an amazing adventure in the world of numismatics. And remember, the people who found these record-breaking coins weren't professional collectors or wealthy investors. They were ordinary people like you who just happened to pay attention, who trusted their instincts when something looked different, and who took the time to get their coins examined by experts. So don't just spend your change, examine your change, because the next great numismatic discovery could be yours. And with that, thank you so much for watching the Coin Archive. If you enjoyed this deep dive into these incredible Washington quarters, please give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more fascinating coin content, and leave a comment below telling us about any interesting coins you found, or if you're going to start checking your quarters more carefully from now on. And who knows, maybe we'll be featuring your discovery in a future video when you find that next record-breaking coin.